What's up, y'all? Cam here. Just wanted to take you through another video talking about one of our other new releases. So last time we talked about mixtape. This time we're going to talk about the new vintage of Duke and Ella. So Duke and Ella began in 2015. Mar and I had two wines that were intended to be kept separate, Muscat and Viognier. And I had been, drinking a lot of wines from the Roussillon. Had always been a fan of producers like Domaine Matassa, where you would see these blendings of Muscat with Rhone white varieties. And so I woke up one morning and wanted to explore that idea with Mar. And she said, "Oh, I just had a dream that we were in the cellar blending the Muscat and the Viognier." So we thought, wow, this is really meant to be. And so we tried the blend, and it was beautiful. The two varieties worked so well together, really complemented each other, kind of filled in the pieces that each was missing. And so we chose the name Duke and Ella when we came up with that blend as homage to that sort of unspoken wavelength we share as husband and wife winemakers. So named for Duke Ellington and Ella Fitzgerald. Specifically their collaborations, but more broadly the idea of jazz improvisation, where there's sort of a unspoken communication between people creatively. And so we recognized that that was really what this wine is. And so it's evolved over the years. 2016 saw Riesling blended with Muscat. Then 17 through 19 were Riesling and Viognier. And then 20, the wines that we had intended to go into Duke and Ella, we found in our new cellar and our new approach to how we were handling fruit to sort of adapt to the changes that were created by, our different equipment, different environment. We decided to take a year off from Duke and Ella, in part to really kind of go back to what it meant to us. What is Duke and Ella? Is it particular grape varieties? Well, no, because it's been, different varieties through the years. Is it particular sites? No, we've worked with different vineyards. So we kind of identified two characteristics that we felt were the hallmarks of Duke and Ella as a blend. And that was salinity, which I think is a hallmark in general of fruit from Santa Barbara County, be it coastal or even further inland. To me, there's always that sort of saltiness, that almost like oceanic tanginess that marks all of those wines. So there was that component, which I felt in the case of Duke and Ella, or I should say which we felt in the case of Duke and Ella, was particularly prominent, more so than other white wines that we produce or orange wines that we produce. And then also acknowledging that unspoken wavelength, again, that we share as winemakers together, which I think is infused, obviously, through all of the wines we make. But in particular, Duke and Ella has always seemed to have a particular affinity for showing that sort of mental connection between Mar and I, and our kind of similar but different creative impulses when it comes to winemaking and in particular blending. So for 2021, I would say this is very different stylistically from past vintages of Duke and Ella, in that it's essentially an orange wine rather than a white wine, for one. But it does continue that sort of narrative thread that I'm talking about, that all the vintages share, which is that salinity, which is very prominent, I think, in here. And then also that creative connection between Mar and I. And so with this, it was really selecting out certain barrels, certain winemaking approaches to the same fruit, really deciding like, well, okay, this makes sense for mixtape. So Chardonnay, for example. The Chardonnay that was direct to press played really well in mixtape. But the skin fermented Chardonnay was a great fit for this blend, because it was, again, very saline, very sea salt, almost borderline floral aromatics to me, sherry sort of aromatics. And texturally, it just played very, very different than the direct to press fruit, which is certainly to be expected. And then the Riesling, the Albarino, the Viognier in here, all some level of skin contact. The Viognier received a full skin fermentation of 16 days. And again, they all have that salinity running through them, and all play off each other in interesting ways in terms of acid, texture. And that's something else I would note as well. I feel like Ducanel has really always been driven more by texture than aromatics. So yeah, let's get into this vintage. So 2021, we have Chardonnay leading the pack. About half of this is Chardonnay that was fermented on the skins. Riesling, Albarino, and then a small amount of Viognier. So the latter three came from San Ynez Valley. The Chardonnay came from here in Santa Maria Valley. And aromatically right now, it's showing this really cool tension between sort of stone fruits, honey, ginger, those more sort of voluptuous, giving, in-your-face aromatics, and then that undercurrent of saltiness. There's also an interesting component that the Chardonnay brought to the table, which I think previous vintages have had to varying degrees as well, and that is a level of reduction. So, if you're not familiar with what reduction is in winemaking, it's essentially, in our case, it's really, because we're doing native fermentations where we're not providing yeast nutrient, the yeast are somewhat starved for oxygen when they're reproducing. And so as a result of that, they give off, in quantities where you want it, it's sort of a hydrogen sulfide component to some degree, where it starts to smell a little rubbery in extreme cases. And in good cases, to me, Great White Burgundy is often a good example of this. It has this flinty sort of, just struck match kind of quality to it that's, to me, something that enhances the perception of minerality in white wines. So this has that, and it has that saltiness, and then particularly from the Albarino and the Viognier, and to a degree the Chardonnay, you're getting all this nice, rich apricot-y, peachy kind of fruit to sort of counterbalance that. And texturally, the skin fermentation is definitely obvious. I mean, there's not a super drying presence on the palate, but there is an element of that contact with the skins that, leaves your mouth a little dry and gives you that sort of sense that you're tasting something that's from the earth, from the rocks. But to keep that balance, there's also a lot of succulent acid here. It's super bright, it's super fresh, and it has that oceanic current running through it again, which to me makes it very savory. It makes it very food friendly. It's, to me, one of the true hallmarks of not just this blend, but of Santa Barbara County in general. I think it's one of the things that sets us apart from other regions in California. And there's this really cool coastal component where you really perceive the ocean and its influence in the wines in a way that you don't in very many other regions. And as it sits in the glass and warms up a little, there's some kind of cool, like ginger, honey, those notes coming out. But for me, again, more than anything, this wine's very much about texture, about that salinity, that contrast between weight and richness, and then acid and brightness and freshness. So it's one that I would love to drink with, really anything from the sea, particularly things that are executed in a relatively straightforward fashion. Sashimi, oysters, scallops. Certainly would be a really good complement to those and bring out more of the kind of umami characteristics in the food and in the wine. But yeah, great wine for summer. I think it's also going to be a great wine as we transition into fall, perhaps even more to some degree, because it has those savory notes and that weight on the palate. So yeah, so that's the 2021 Ducanella, which we're really, really happy with. I'm glad that we've brought it back, and that we've found an expression of it that feels true to our new space and our new cellar conditions, but also carries through the thread of what it's been over the past 7 years, 8 years. So anyways, I hope you enjoy it. We have it in our summer bundles, which are featured on the website, where it's paired up with Mixtape and Under the Sun, which I think are great partners to this wine. And yeah, until next time.